Have you ever found yourself, maybe surprisingly, really swayed by something? An argument, or I don't know, even just a powerful ad?
Or maybe you've seen someone you know or a public figure just seem to completely flip their beliefs, and you're left wondering what actually happened there.
Yeah, exactly. It makes you think about how solid our own minds really are.
Yeah.
Like unshakable diamonds. Or maybe more like clay, something that can actually be shaped.
And that malleability, that sort of shapeability, is exactly what we're digging into today. We're focusing on Kathleen Taylor's book, Brainwashing, the Science of Thought Control. And it's fascinating because she goes way beyond the kind of sci-fi idea of mind control. She looks at the real psychology, the social forces, even the biology behind how minds can be changed, sometimes dramatically.
So our mission today is really to unpack what's behind this loaded term, brainwashing. We want to move past the sensational stuff.
Yeah, look at the origins, how it shows up in extreme situations, but also, and this is key, in everyday life too.
And ultimately, what does it all tell us about our own minds? About our freedom? Okay, let's get into it.
So the word itself, brainwashing, it actually has a surprisingly specific start date.
Oh, really? When was that?
It was publicly coined, or at least popularized, by a CIA operative named Edward Hunter back in 1950.
Right in the middle of the Korean War.
Exactly. And it came about because the U.S. military was seeing something really disturbing with their prisoners of war returning from Chinese camps.
What were they seeing?
Some POWs came back seemingly converted, genuinely believing in communism, praising Mao, denouncing the U.S. And the really weird part, this often continued even after they were released.
Wow. So it wasn't just forced compliance while they were captive.
No, that was the unnerving thing. Hunter described it as this weird, unnatural compulsion. He said it gave him a creepy feeling.
The conceptual gap, as Taylor puts it, quoting Shefflin and Opton.
Precisely. Brainwashing sounds like an explanation. That's the key phrase. It gives a name to the inexplicable, maybe shifts responsibility, makes it less scary somehow.
It becomes the go-to explanation when nothing else makes sense. Like a modern secular version of demonic possession, maybe.
That's a great analogy Taylor uses, yeah. But, and this is crucial in her book, the idea of changing minds, that's ancient. Humans have been influencing each other forever.
And the words we use often hide the influence. Think about evangelism, good message, or propaganda, just to plant ideas.
Education, to draw out. Re-education sounds like just a second chance. Even indoctrination or Pavlov's conditioning, many of these terms don't sound inherently negative.
It's only when you get to things like coercive persuasion
Yeah.
that the alarm bells really start ringing.
And the psychologist Robert Lifton, who Taylor draws on heavily, he identified basically 4 main ways people try to change minds.
Okay, what are they?
First, there's coercion. That's the straightforward, you must change or else. Big stick approach.
Gotcha.
Then exhortation. That's more like, you should change, be a better person, join the cause. Appeals to morality.
Okay.
Third is therapy. You can change, let us help you become healthy, framed as healing.
Right.
And finally, realization. You can change, fulfill your true potential, often used in self-help or spiritual contexts.
And Taylor points out that totalitarian regimes, they really lean on those first two, right? Coercion and exhortation.
Heavily, yeah. You see it play out starkly in some famous cases. Patty Hearst, for example.
The kidnapped heiress who joined her captors, committed bank robbery, that story was huge.
Exactly. And her case highlighted all those elements the public associates with brainwashing. It was purposeful. They intended to change her. The cognitive difference was huge heiress to urban guerrilla.
And the timescale was incredibly short for such a drastic shift.
And immediately, brainwashing was the explanation everyone reached for. That concept of last resort again.
And emotion must have played a massive role there. Fear, isolation.
Absolutely critical, as Taylor explains. In these situations, new beliefs get tangled up with intense emotions. Fear, yes, but maybe also a weird sense of belonging, intense loyalty to the group. It makes the beliefs almost sacred, hard to challenge rationally.
It reminds me of the story of Archbishop Cranmer you mentioned from the book. Tudor England, psychological torture.
A really harrowing example. Deprivation, fear, loneliness, seeing his friends burned. His intellect was attacked, sure, but Taylor argues it was the terrible pressures, the emotional grind, the uncertainty, even the faint hope of mercy that broke his resistance.
And then later, it was another emotional jolt contempt from a priest that seemed to trigger his final defiant stand at the stake.
Yeah, it's a powerful illustration of how emotion drives belief in action. And his situation had echoes of those Chinese thought reform camps, with the isolation, the discomfort, the intense group pressure. designed to break people down emotionally.
Okay, so this leads us to Robert Lifton's work again, and what you call the architecture of this kind of control, his 8 themes of ideological totalism.
Yes, this is where Kathleen Taylor really dives deep, and it gets quite chilling. These themes show you the psychological toolkit used in thought reform and totalitarian systems.
Let's unpack a few. Number 1 is milieu control. What's that exactly?
It's not just controlling external communication like letters or news. It's about dominating a person's internal world too. Their thoughts, their self-reflection, constant monitoring, isolation, directing focus.
Controlling the entire environment inside and out. Okay, what's next?
Demand for purity. This is that absolute black and white thinking. Us versus them, good versus evil, party versus non-party. Anything outside the approved zone is contamination and must be purged.
Like Orwell's 4 legs good, 2 legs bad. That kind of radical simplification.
Precisely. It eliminates nuance. Then there's loading the language. This is huge.
Using words to control thought.
Exactly. Creating jargon, thought-terminating cliches, words that stop critical thinking rather than encourage it. Think Newspeak in 1984, where freedom is literally being erased from the language. If you can't say it, can you even think it?
That's deeply disturbing. And another one you mentioned.
Maybe the most chilling. Primacy of doctrine over person. The ideology, the party line, is presented as more real, more true, more important than any individual's actual experience or feelings.
So your own pain, your own memories, they don't matter if they contradict the doctrine?
They're irrelevant. Or worse, they're proof you haven't reformed yet. The individual is completely subservient to the abstract idea.
And these weren't just theoretical. Taylor describes how they were applied in those Chinese thought reform camps. Father Luca and Father Simon.
Right. Luca faced intense pressure, isolation, criticism, sleep deprivation, physical hardship. He got so confused, he basically confessed to anything just to make it stop. False confessions, total breakdown.
But Father Simon, his case was different.
In a way, yes. He endured similar treatment, but he also had this pre-existing affection for China. The combination of pressures and perhaps some positive reinforcement led to what seemed like a genuine, lasting conversion. Years later, he was still praising communism, denying the brutality, even though he somehow held on to his core religious beliefs, too. It showed deep change was possible, not just forced agreement.
It's uncanny how much 1984 reflects this. The 2 minutes hate is pure manipulated emotion, right?
Absolutely. And Winston's job, rewriting history, that's the demand for purity in action. Newspeak is loading the language.
And Room 101, O'Brien telling Winston they'll capture his inner mind, reshape him completely before they kill him. That's the ultimate goal, not just obedience, but total conversion.
Body and soul, that's the totalist aim.
And Taylor makes the point that this isn't just about states, right? It extends to other groups.
Definitely. After 9/11, there was a lot of talk about brainwashing again. It highlighted the power of what Taylor calls ethereal ideas.
What are those?
Abstract concepts, religious duty, political ideals that become valued more than human life itself. They justify extreme actions, dehumanize opponents. Groups like Al-Qaeda blend religion and politics very effectively to create these powerful motivators.
And cults, too, like Manson or Jonestown.
Taylor calls them micro-totalitarian systems. Leaders like Manson or Jim Jones use charisma, isolation in communes, meeting basic needs for belonging. They create these intense, cohesive groups where individual identity can just dissolve into the group belief.
Which brought up that legal problem in the Manson trial. If they were brainwashed, are they responsible?
But the courts, then and at Nuremberg, ultimately rejected that line of defense. Legally, peer pressure influence, however strong, doesn't usually absolve you of criminal liability. It's a tough line to draw.
So that's the extreme end. But Taylor also talks about brainwashing by stealth, the subtle stuff we see every day.
Yes, shifting from outright coercion to the everyday persuasion tactics that are all around us.
This is where Robert Cialdini's work comes in, right? His weapons of influence.
Exactly. And they're everywhere once you start looking. Like commitment and consistency, get someone to agree to something small first.
Like signing a petition.
Yeah, then they're much more likely to agree to something bigger later, like donating money, just to stay consistent with that initial action.
Or authority. We tend to obey figures of authority, even if the authority is fake, like an actor in a doctor's coat selling medicine.
Or even perceived authority, like mental health professionals. Then there's likability. Simple but powerful. We just prefer to say yes to people we like. Film star selling products, the friendly charity collector.
And scarcity. Making something seem rare or limited edition automatically makes us want it more.
It taps into our fear of missing out. And finally, social proof. If everyone else is doing it, buying it, believing it, it must be right, following the herd.
These work because they're mental shortcuts, heuristics. They save us thinking time.
Exactly. They're usually efficient. But, as Taylor warns, that efficiency makes us open to exploitation if we're not paying attention, if we don't stop and think.
Which is why one definition of brainwashing is just persuasion by propaganda or salesmanship.
And advertising is the absolute master of bypassing rational thought. It aims straight for the emotions: guilt, anxiety, desire, happiness.
Using bright colors, fast cuts, music, humor.
Right. To create an association, this car equals freedom and excitement. This drink equals popularity. It's about getting you to feel the connection, not analyze the product's merits. Just absorb the message.
And the media, how does that fit in?
It's a huge mass communication system shaping our view of reality. It exerts its own kind of milieu control, maybe not through isolation, but through the sheer repetition of certain themes, certain formats. Think lifestyle magazines or even news outlets often covering stories in very similar ways.
And you mentioned bias versus frames earlier. Can you explain that again?
Sure. Bias is often about systematically highlighting certain facts or misrepresenting others. You can often detect bias if you look closely. But frames are subtler. They're the underlying narrative structures, the templates we use, like casting someone as a brave hero or a situation as an intractable conflict.
So the frame shapes how we even understand the information before we evaluate it.
Precisely. It taps into our unconscious system of value judgments. And Taylor's key point is that no message is neutral. We always interpret things through our own experiences, our own filters. We add that emotional tinge. The media's power isn't just what it says, but how it frames things and how we inevitably read between the lines.
Okay, and what about education? Taylor calls that a mass belief-shaping process, too.
Yeah, and an ideological apparatus. Ideally, its purpose is to create informed citizens, give skills, encourage critical thinking.
But it can be abused, right?
Oh, absolutely. History is full of examples. Taylor mentions things like state-mandated ideology teachers in Belarus, or madrasas used for extremist indoctrination, or even battles over teaching evolution in schools. It shows how easily education can become a tool for imposing a specific worldview.
Though hopefully good education also teaches you how to think, not just what to think. Promoting critical analysis seems key.
That's the ideal, yes. To increase individual freedom by giving people the tools to question, to analyze, to stop and think. That's the crucial defense.
This discussion of subtle control makes me think of Aldous Huxley's Brave New World.
A perfect comparison Taylor makes. It's a dystopia where control is disguised as freedom. Everyone's needs are met, pleasure is readily available via soma, and people genuinely seem to love their servitude.
Which raises that really deep question Taylor poses.
Yeah.
Why do we seem to value freedom, even if it involves struggle or pain, more than just simple happiness or contentment? It's a fundamental question about what we want from life.
And it ties directly into her core idea about the brain's malleability, that we aren't fixed entities.
Right, the idea that our minds are malleable clay, constantly changing even as adults. That's not how we usually think of ourselves.
It's not, but the science supports it. Our neurons are constantly making and breaking connections at the synapses, and Taylor even points out something as basic as diet can affect this. The fats you eat, like omega-3s from fish versus saturated fats, literally change the composition of your neuron membranes.
Which affects how well they communicate. Wow.
Exactly. It changes the efficiency of your brain's signaling. It's quite direct.
And how we structure beliefs.
Yeah.
You mentioned schemas and cobwebs.
Yeah, think of them as your mental maps or networks, webs of interconnected thoughts, feelings, memories, behaviors. And what's fascinating is we can have multiple, even contradictory maps running at the same time. We keep them separate.
Like Walt Whitman, I contain multitudes.
Precisely. But as circumstances force those conflicting maps or beliefs to activate together, you get cognitive dissonance.
That uncomfortable feeling.
Yeah, that mental stress. And our brains hate it. They work overtime to resolve it, maybe by rationalizing or creating a special exception category, like deciding someone is an exceptional example that doesn't disprove your stereotype. Anything to reduce the clash.
And Taylor uses that web analogy for belief strength.
Right. Yeah. It's a great visual. Changing a weak belief on the edge of the web, easy. Snip a thread. But attacking a core belief, that's like cutting a main support strand. It can threaten the whole structure.
Which could lead someone to just reject reality, or worse.
Exactly. If the internal belief structure is rigid enough, reality itself might bend to fit the expectation, rather than the other way around.
And emotions are woven in all of this.
Absolutely central. Taylor highlights universal emotions like fear, anger, joy, disgust. And she touches on that classic James Lange theory. Maybe we feel afraid because our body is reacting, because we tremble.
The physical reaction comes first.
That's the idea. And then there's emotional contagion. We unconsciously mimic others' emotions.
We catch feelings.
Literally. And that helps groups bond, creates conformity, makes us susceptible. Stress, too useful short-term, damaging long-term. And emotions can narrow our focus, make us impulsive, prioritize the immediate feeling over long-term goals. We choose to lose control.
So with all this malleability and emotional influence, what protects us? What allows us to resist?
This is where the prefrontal cortex, the PFC, comes in. Taylor calls it the brain's ideology, the executive control center.
The part that lets us stop and think.
Exactly. It integrates past experience, filters information, allows for planning, overrides impulses. It's where rational consideration happens. It's crucial for resisting unwanted influence.
And the Phineas Gage story really drives that home. Damage the PFC.
And you can lose your social compass, your ability to plan, your very personality. Gage was no longer Gage. It shows how vital that brain region is.
But the good news is, it's trainable.
Yes. It develops late into our 20s, and it benefits from use. Education, mental activity, new experiences, they all strengthen the PFC, enrich your cognitive landscape, and make you more resistant to manipulation. Use it or lose it.
But even with these general principles, everyone's brain is still unique.
Fundamentally, our cogwebs, our PFC capacity, our life experiences, they all differ. And that individual variation, Taylor argues, is actually a huge obstacle for anyone trying to implement mass mind control. One size definitely does not fit all.
Which is frankly a relief.
It really is. And it connects to the bigger philosophical picture of freedom. Taylor looks at Daniel Dennett's idea of compatibilism,
Which says freedom and determinism can coexist.
Dennett argues freedom isn't about being uncaused, but about our ability to predict things and change ourselves based on interacting with the world, using memory for long-term planning, like Ulysses resisting the sirens.
So freedom is being guided by our own reasons, our own internal causes, rather than just external forces.
That's the idea. But if freedom is partly an emotional feeling, as some neuroscientists suggest, that feeling could potentially be manipulated too.
You mean someone could dampen our reactance, that alarm bell that rings when freedom feels threatened, making us feel free when we're not?
That's the unsettling possibility. Or amplify reactance to whip up anger about perceived threats. It cuts both ways.
So for someone trying to brainwash someone, what are the main hurdles according to Taylor?
They need to bypass that resistance. Isolation is key, cutting off ties to old beliefs, old support systems. Or, conversely, knowing the victim really well to tailor the new beliefs so they fit smoothly into their existing mental framework.
And that mix of brutality and kindness you mentioned with the POWs.
Yeah, that can be more effective than constant pressure. It creates confusion, dependency, breaks down resistance in a different way. Charisma is another powerful tool, that blend of confidence, perceived power, single-mindedness.
And you mentioned maze wave resynthesis. Sounds complex.
It's about creativity, really. The ability some people have to take existing ideas and reshape them into something new and compelling that seems to solve problems. Think charismatic leaders, inventors, artists. But interestingly, Taylor notes this high creativity can sometimes be linked to things like temporal lobe lability, which also carries a higher risk of psychosis. It's a complex picture.
And then their ideas themselves. Taylor talks about them spreading like viruses, memetics.
Right, the idea of cognitive infection. She argues that strong emotions, like fear or disgust, can make a whole society more receptive to harmful ideas, making it hard for rational arguments to gain traction, like how fear and scapegoating paved the way for anti-Semitic propaganda in Nazi Germany.
But she also suggests security can be an antidote.
Generally, yes. Societies that feel more secure tend to be more tolerant of different ideas, leading to richer cognitive landscapes, making them less vulnerable to simplistic, totalist ideologies. But there's a flip side. If education creates high expectations that reality doesn't meet, that frustration can also fuel reactance and anger.
Okay, so what about the future? Technology must play a role here. Neuroimaging, direct brain interfaces. Is that the ultimate threat?
Taylor explores this, acknowledging that current tech fMRI is still pretty crude for real mind control, but she doesn't shy away from the potential dangers down the line. Covert surveillance, direct neural influence, maybe even genetic manipulation. These things are theoretically possible, even if they seem like sci-fi nightmares now.
And that Soma world idea, virtual reality making us passive.
Susan Greenfield's worry, yeah. That VR could create such a perfectly satisfying bubble that we lose touch with reality, become childish solipsists. But Taylor also counters that humans seem to have a deep need for genuine connection, for truth, like in The Truman Show, where the character eventually seeks reality despite the perfect simulation. That reactance kicks in.
So despite the scary possibilities, there's room for optimism.
Definitely. Taylor emphasizes that brains and societies are complex, often self-correcting systems. Our individuality is a powerful defense, and understanding the roots of unhappiness can lead to positive change, focusing on community or real needs rather than just control or consumption.
And she offers a framework for resistance, the AFE-set approach.
Yes, it's a really useful acronym. Freedom, agency, complexity, ends not means, and thinking.
Okay, break that down.
It means actively valuing and maximizing individual freedom and agency, recognizing and embracing complexity, resisting simplistic answers, insisting that people are always ends, never just means to an ideological goal, and crucially, promoting critical thinking.
So it's about fostering a mindset and a society that's inherently resistant to totalist control.
Exactly. Questioning assumptions, debating bad ideas openly, even using satire. Don't let doctrines prioritize abstract ideas over actual human beings.
So wrapping this up, Kathleen Taylor's Brainwashing shows us it's not some kind of dark magic.
Not at all. It's a complex interplay of psychology, social pressure, biology, things we can actually understand.
Yeah. And understanding them gives you, the listener, some power back.
Absolutely. We can make conscious choices about how we think, how we act, the kind of society we build to make those dangerous, ethereal ideas less lethally attractive, as she puts it.
So the final thought is really about agency. Knowing your mind is malleable, knowing freedom isn't just a word, but something you can feel and protect.
Yeah.
What do you do with that knowledge? How do you choose to cultivate your own mental landscape, your own cognitive garden?